don't talk about money or sex in America.
All the way from Atlanta, Georgia, Miss Sonia Booker. Number one, how was your flight?
Oh my gosh, it was great.
Was it good for you?
It was really good. You know, it was flying during COVID. I don't know how
you had to wear the mask?
The whole time.
The whole flight, right?
Yeah, you're like, I need a quicker flight.
Yeah, and the trick is just to continuously eat food.
Oh.
Because if you eat food, you can take it off.
Oh.
So I just sit there and eat gummy bears the entire time. It's super easy.
I'm eating.
Yeah. So you're allowed to take it off, you're eating. Yeah.
I love that. I'm
so
going to do that on the way back.
I'll buy you a bag of gummy bears.
Got it.
And you
or
can do
the
it.
blue M&Ms.
Yeah, those are good too. Man, we got so much to talk about. You've got obviously books that you've written.
Yes.
You've been in Oprah's magazine and all that stuff, and you got, of course, you got a fund that you run as well. But there's a lot of other cool stuff that you do that I want to talk to you about. I love what you got going on with the banks and your 501c3.
Yeah.
And you've been all over TV and all over Atlanta for sure. And I want to dive into a lot of that stuff. Before I do that, though, let's take a step back just for a second. Just 30,000 foot view. Tell me what it was like growing up, Sonia. So let's think about when you were a kid for a little bit.
So when I was a kid, it all started with, so little girl running around, with pigtails. But I grew up with my grandparents a lot. I spent a lot of times on my grandparents' farm.
Okay.
My mom was a single parent, and so in the summers and a lot of times we had to spend with our grandparents.
Yeah.
And I ended up falling in love with the whole culture of the farm.
Really?
And so I spent a lot of time with both my grandmother and grandfather.
Okay.
So I learned cooking and sewing and all those.
Where were you at this time?
In Utica, Mississippi.
In Mississippi. Okay. Utica, Mississippi.
Utica, Mississippi, not the big city Jackson, this little bitty town.
Tiny.
And we always call it the country. Like you got to go to the country.
Okay.
It's like 30 minutes away. And then with my grandfather, I learned how to, go peddling. We did what was called peddling in the South.
Okay.
And so that's when we would take all the produce that we would grow, the okra, the collard greens, everything, and we would take them to the city and sell it on Tuesdays and Saturdays.
Okay.
So my job was to pack the truck and to make sure like everything was ready to go so we can put our hands on everything when we went into the city to sell. And so, as a early person, I just really liked spending time with my grandparents. I didn't know I was becoming very, industrious and entrepreneurial. But by the time I was like 12 years old, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Wow.
It was really weird that nobody called it an entrepreneur then. It was just
a new word, basically.
It's like nobody said that. I knew I wanted to be a person who can kind of control their outcome. And, the idea of saying, wow, there were seeds and we grew things and, then we went into the city and we came back with more green for money.
Different type of green.
A different kind of green. It was like I wanted to be a person that could produce.
Right.
So that's where I wanted to create stuff.
So it started at a young age from flipping green beans, I suppose.
Flipping
green beans to now you flip houses and buildings and so forth.
So Andrew, when I would go with my grandfather, the people would say like, oh, do you have the peas shelled? These purple, they were called black-eyed peas, but they're like purple whole peas and stuff. And so, I asked my grandfather, I was like, well, everybody's asking about them being, peeled already. And he said, well, if you do them, you could make the extra money.
Okay.
So the whole summer my hands are like purple,
Stained purple.
So I got $2 a bag, so by doing it. But it was just kind of like, okay, I'll do this for
now
more
you live
money.
in the city now?
Now I live in Atlanta, in the city.
So I was going to ask you, do you miss the old school country at all?
I actually do.
Yeah.
I actually do. I miss a lot about the just easy way of life. I like, land and being in that kind of slowness of it all. And so I find myself getting away, to another place that we got outside of Atlanta.
Atlanta's a fast-paced, moving city.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stuff going on. There's always
all
something
the time.
going on. Yeah, always.
And it hasn't stopped.
Yeah. It just keeps growing. Actually, it's going faster, not slower.
Right. We have this joke in Atlanta, like coronavirus is not in Atlanta. It's like you could go to Atlanta and nothing.
It's so true. And one of my buddies we were just talking about lives in New York, and in Atlanta, like we really never, or Georgia,
right?
We never really like shut down, or like restaurants stayed open the whole time, and it was all fairly normal. And my buddy who lives out of New York City is like, he hasn't been out of his like neighborhood. I was just talking to him like last week. He's like, oh bro, he's like, I can't wait till this is over. I can go somewhere. I'm like, what do you mean? You can go now. Like no one's stopping you. But I guess when you're living there, maybe he's like in this like complete shutdown
mode. But LA is the same
mode.
way. Like LA, I have a lot of friends in LA, and they're like, oh, it's gonna be like next year this time before we really. And I'm like, really, And it's just been weird.
And it's amazing because, like, obviously you flew, and I've flown since COVID. It's amazing where I thought that it would be different, but every Delta flight I've gotten on was packed, sold out. There wasn't extra seats anywhere. So people are still moving around.
People are still moving around.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of entrepreneurs though too.
Probably. It's probably all the entrepreneurs like, I gotta go. I gotta go do something. I want to take a step back just for a second. When you went through, I want to tell you about your grandfather and the entrepreneur side. Did they push college education? Was that kind of something they wanted you to go down? Did you go down that road?
Yeah, it was huge. It was it was never a conversation like, are you going to college? It was, what college are you going to?
Okay.
It was that kind of implied. I always tell people, like, my family is full of entrepreneurs and attorneys, which are like we have like over 20. I think the last count was like right at like 20 attorneys in our family.
Wow.
Like my grandfather was always like, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution.
Yeah, sure.
And so you had to control policy and understood laws and, make a difference. And so, he was just always big on that. But, and it's like, we all have mostly post-education, not even just the bare minimum. Like when we look through our family line, everybody went to law school or medical school. I have an MBA, so it wasn't just educate, it was like, go all in.
Yeah, education.
And, which was interesting that I did that. And I went to the University of Southern Miss, and then I went to the University of Dallas. And my grandfather, on my first job, he was just always bugging me, like, don't you have enough experience? Like, why are you still on that job?
Yeah.
And I was like, I like this job, so I always felt he was disconnected. Like, he doesn't know anything about this new life. I got like my, my money's being matched, and I got my salary. And he was like, a job is for experience. Like,
This is still your grandfather.
This is my grandfather, right? Like pushing me off my job. And so, finally I was like, okay, well, can I stay there paying for my master's degree? Like, and after I graduated, like the night I graduated, I ended up leaving Dallas, and I had put in like a 2-month notice at my job, and nobody thought I was going to really leave.
Yeah.
I was like, and I moved to Atlanta, just not knowing what I was going to do, just knowing it was time for me to start my entrepreneurial journey.
I'll ask you one question you just brought up. I to ask you on it. You said about a lot of your family are attorneys, 20 some odd attorneys, I think you said. As an entrepreneur, have you ever had a itch to be an attorney? Like thought, man, I could actually go be an attorney. Like, I've always had that thought, like I would love to do a trial attorney. Yeah. Do you ever thought that you wanted to do it?
The funny part is people think that I'm an attorney.
They think
like I use real estate, so it's a running joke. Like you don't want to negotiate with her. You don't want to, because it's like, because I almost take like this kind of attorney protocol, like, it's a contract. Oh, we're in negotiation. Oh, we're.
So you're brutal like an attorney.
That's my way. That's how I use my attorneyness. But I used to think I wanted to be one, and I used to go and watch my uncle try cases. Like in high school, I would go and just wanted to go to courtroom. I was like, always
I loved
like,
it.
oh my gosh, like did you know that he was innocent? Did you know that? It was just like all this kind of behind the scenes and this masterfulness around. The angle that they took of the. It was just always like, wow, that's so masterful.
Talk to me about how you basically got into entrepreneurship. So now you graduated college. What was the journey? You got people watching that are maybe trying to start a business right now.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that kind of path for you, that journey for you?
It was very interesting because all I knew is that I wanted to do something that I could make a difference and that I could control, if that's the right thing. And so I've kind of fell into my first entrepreneurial adventure was I was the youngest Allstate insurance agent.
Okay.
And I remember kind of taking the sabbatical time, and I was sitting in Piedmont Park, and I just felt like, when am I going to have another time in my life that I can just not do anything and figure it out? So I'm like looking at the papers, like newspapers, not online, and I see this job to be a life insurance coordinator.
Okay.
And I thought, that looks interesting. And my grandfather used to have a life insurance burial policy route that I used to go on. So
Okay.
surely I probably could do insurance. So I took this job, I interviewed and took this job. So I go in and I'm being sent to like Bloomington, Illinois and all this stuff. And I remember traveling one time because I would go and I had to my job was to keep life insurance policies coming out.
Okay.
So because the pipeline would get stopped, the agent would write it, then it would go, into the dark hole, and then it's like the person's waiting on their policy, the person's waiting to get paid. So I was to go and just see where the bottleneck was. So I'm going down. I remember one time I'm there, it's dead of winter, and I come out of the hotel, I'm looking for my car. My car is snowed in, I can't find my car, and I'm like, what is this?
That did not happen in Mississippi or Atlanta, snowing in the cars.
So quickly I realized I don't think I really like this part of the job. And then as I was building these bridges with agents, I was like, I really like what the agents are doing.
Okay.
So I went to my powers to be, and I was like, well, I think I want to be an agent and not a life insurance coordinator. So, they're kind of looking at me, and I'm like, well, what does it take? And so he gives me these 3 criterias, and he says, you have to have at least, at that time, it was like $50,000. And then you have to be able to show you can support yourself for a year.
Okay.
And then you have to get your PNC and life insurance license. And I was like, okay. And so I'm thinking to myself, I think I have, most of those I don't have a license. So a couple weeks go by, and I'm looking at, my 401k and then some money I had from my grandfather, different things and stuff. So I was a big saver, huge saver. And so I go back and I say, I have the $50,000 dollar. I can support myself, for a year. It's probably peanut butter, but I can, make that happen. And I said, so now I just need to know about the, the license. And he's like, so you have $50,000.
I thought that was going to stop you.
Right. So I became the youngest Allstate insurance agent. And that was so incredible. It was daunting. For the first year and a half, it was like I was in Lilburn, Georgia, next to Outback Steakhouse. And it was just kind of like everybody had their agent. Nobody was looking to switch agents. It was just this agent has been in our family forever.
Right.
And so I went, okay, well, I have to do something different. By this time I'm bleeding cash. I'm eating peanut butter for real. And so then I, go outside of my warm market and I start doing these dealership programs where I would go on site to the dealerships to write insurance for people who bought their cars on the weekend who could not buy in coverage. So I became
the weekend insurance person.
Yeah, because it was if you bought a car and you had a policy, then you just bind it over. But if it's your first car and you don't have one, then you're I had to wait till Monday.
Right.
And Monday, from Saturday to Monday in a new car was the end of the world.
Yeah, I couldn't
so
imagine.
It was call me, I can make that happen. And so everybody would start calling me. So I was all over, writing policies and doing new neighborhoods. So then after that, I became the top agent in the state of Georgia for 4 years.
Wow. So that's where you started, was
and so
selling
that was my start, selling insurance. Yeah. And so I'm always so then from there, about the last year of the insurance agent, I started doing some real estate investing.
Okay.
And I had a partner who was an agent as well.
Okay.
And we would start, and he would go out, find the house, and I would do all the purchase. and then he would handle all of the renovations.
Okay.
And so it was this great partnership because we both kind of knew our role. We would do that. We did about 10 or 12 of those. And I
Were
remember
you selling the houses?
we were selling them.
Okay.
And I remember that one year, like thinking like, I made more money doing this than real estate. And than insurance. And at that time with insurance, everything was changing. Like, oh, well, we're not going to write any more policies in that zip code because we have a lot of risks. Oh, we're not going to do this. Oh, but those were things that were like,
your forte, your specialty.
That's what I'm doing. And so I remember saying, like, if they send out one more thing that they're not going to do, I'm selling.
Yeah.
And nobody could believe that when I said, I'm going to sell my agency because it was like,
you were the number one at the top.
Yeah. And so I remember calling up saying, I want to value my book of business. And that was my first kind of like, wow, I've built from scratch, like zero to having this business that's profitable and valuable that I could sell was like, whoa, and so I sold it, exited out, and went full-time into real estate from there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said. I want to get your insight on this. You talked about that back in the day. You said that you were a massive saver. And I'll throw the word Dave Ramsey, if you will, style there. Today, being in business, are you still more of a saver or more investor? What would you say today?
I'm definitely more of an investor. Kind of like right out of college was this 1-bedroom, making a decent salary, not really spending, and so it was just always like, what do? You save it, and that was kind of like definitely a principle from family. But now, I am investor.
That's where I was going with it. I mean, as far as like someone watching the show, either in business or trying to create wealth in their own life, is that through, would you say it's more through them saving to it or them investing into it?
I think it's both. I think you start out by being a saver.
Okay.
I think a saver and a person who kind of can get themselves in the right mindset of money, it's the first piece of that. Because, I have this thing, build wealth, $1, one decision at a time.
Right.
And so in that dollar, if I start thinking about, just if I don't know what to invest in and what to do, just save it for now. And then as you're starting to get more sophisticated, then you start understanding like, oh, I like to invest in real estate. I like to invest in businesses. I like to, invest in the stock market. And so that allows you just to kind of get control of your mindset first, and then just get yourself in that principle of just saving, just save first, and then start figuring out everything else.
Go back to that philosophy that you were talking about, the $1, one decision. Dive into that just a little bit more. What does that mean to someone watching right now when you say $1, one decision? What does that mean?
It means like you always have to ask yourself, is this the best use of this dollar?
Okay.
Is this the best use of this dollar for something that's in this present or for something that's in the future? Because when you think about, $1 a day, you're like, okay, that's $365. Not that big a deal. But then you say $5 a day. And you think about the habit, a coffee habit or bottled water, or $5 can vanish from us in a period of a day. We can go through everything and we'd still be like, but $5 is missing. So $5 a day, if we got in the habit of that, that's like $1,860. And so now, in a year's time, and so now when we start thinking about our future and all those things that we're talking about we want to do that we are never able to do, that's in our decision making. And we have the power to make those decisions to say, okay, no, I'm really working toward this, so that's an important, way. The best decision for that is not this, it's that. And that's how you start to really just, do those things every day. And then when you get up to $20, now we're talking, of just really kind of taking, control of those decisions.
Yeah, I know you teach wealth and business and so forth a lot. I know you help kids in the entrepreneur school that you create as well, which I want to get to in a second. But I want to back up for a second. I want to talk to you about you've made some incredible connections in your life. And everything from the little bit of, we talked a little bit about the Oprah and the magazine that you were in, and then even your mentor that kind of mentored your life, which is so powerful,
Yeah,
who your mentor
yeah.
was, and then even, I don't know if you want to get into this, but even a little bit all the way back to George Washington,
Yeah.
your family ancestry there.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about kind of maybe brand association. I mean, connecting with the Oprah network and all that stuff, what has that done for you as a brand, and is it worth other people trying to connect with brands like that to help them out?
You know, Andrew, the funny part is I didn't try to do anything.
Okay.
You know, I didn't try to do anything but position myself and do my passion. So when you start talking about someone who's at home thinking about starting a business, like, what is your passion? When I'm doing real estate deals or real estate, I don't ever feel like I'm working. Like my whole life of like what I do now is like never like work. It's just all stuff I'm passionate about, I'm interested in, and I was able to just build a business around it.
Right.
And so when I think about like how some of those things happen, I do have to believe that it was because how I was positioned that they were able to happen, that my role was, you know, positioning myself to be able to be discovered or you know, align with certain people. But like with my mentor, the late Herman J. Russell, it took me like 2 years to meet him. And I had been reading about him like in magazines and like stuff like that. And I thought, he's in Atlanta, I'm in Atlanta, I need to meet this person. I knew that he had something to offer me, but I didn't know what.
Just for a second, back up just for a second. For those that don't maybe know who he is.
Yeah, so he's a pioneer of real estate. Like he was the person who, at age 16, he did his first duplex.
Okay.
You know, and he was just always into real estate and able to do that. And what a lot of people, he wrote a book called Building Atlanta before he passed away, which is just an amazing book of how he really built relationships, and he says, you know, how he broke through segregation. So what I was so fascinated with is how would this man have this $100 million plus company that was built during a time of civil rights, you know, like, you know, that was a 50-year-old company. And it was just so intriguing to understand that his connection to community was so important. Like he basically funded the civil rights movement. Like he would use his land to bail people out of jail.
Wow.
So like one night, you know,
he's connected to Martin Luther.
Very connected.
Yeah.
Like he has these pictures of like Dr. King, Martin Luther King, like in his at his house he had this indoor pool, and you know Dr. King would go over and just kind of clear his head and you know go to Herman's pool and stuff, you know. And so I remember like seeing this picture of him with his swim trunks on and stuff. I'm like, whoa, no, you know, I don't want to. I want to just see him.
Yeah.
I have a dream, like you know, with the suit on, not the you know
shorts
swim
and no
trunks.
shirt. Yeah.
But yeah, so he really used a lot of what he had, his money, his property, to be able to ensure that people. You know, that you think about Dr. King leading this whole movement, couldn't just go hang out at the Y.
Right.
You know, so it's like, go to my house, like this refuge of, you know, indoor pool, we'll leave a key for him, that kind of thing. And so it's just really amazing seeing and understanding how he moved so much forward.
And then he was your mentor.
He was my mentor.
You connected with him and stayed with him.
I connected with him. It was supposed to be a 15-minute meeting.
Okay.
Like everybody, I said, just tell him I need 15 minutes. Like I just, you know, and it was just like I wanted to get his cell phone number for him to know I was in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And that was really all I was going after. And so, you know, fast forward into 12 years later, you know, and I remember, you know, when he passed away and people were calling and they were like, you know, I know how close y'all were. And I said, you know, I asked for 15 minutes and God gave me 12 years. Like, I'm like forever grateful.
Blessed, yeah.
But I'm just like, you know, it was always that kind of, what did I not ask him? What did I? Because I say a lot that your mentors shape a lot of who you are, not just in business, but you know, like he was such a humanitarian. Like he shaped like how I see the world and how I show up to serve. Like by being able to watch him in life, and then now watching his legacy, how great that's, how powerful that's been.
You think it's part of what drove you to your 501c3? Is kind of his lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I never really. wanted a 501c3.
Uh-huh.
You always think about the paperwork, it was just like with, I remember doing a fund and I was just like, I never like bureaucracy and a lot of red tape. So if anything feels like red tape, I'd be like, I don't want to do that. And so as I started talking and really learning more about 501c3s and how I could really use the real estate, and how when you look at a lot of 501c3s, some of your big ones, a lot of their holdings are in real estate being donated. You look at like Habitat for Humanity or, the Red Cross, they have so much of their equity is donated land to them, and so from that standpoint, it was like, well, I don't really want a 501c3, but I do want to be able to have land and real property donated so that I can do good work out of it. So that's what really, pushed me, to do it. And then we started the Vault Foundation. So
let's talk a little bit about the Vault Foundation, so we're here now.
Yeah.
I love what your concept is. So give me a little bit of idea, the viewers, what is the Vault Foundation? What do you do there? Yeah,
so the Vault Foundation is really about, what it takes to be a well person. And so we always say we're building well communities one bank vault at a time. It's kind of like
one bank vault at a time.
One bank vault at a time. Okay. So all of the buildings have the original vaults, in them. And so out of that, when I started thinking about what is a well person, so our pillars are the arts, and so we really connect people from art from a healing standpoint, art as a therapeutic standpoint, and just art as a creative outlet. And so art, everything from visual to music to film, it's just creative community that when people can tap into that, they really are better, just better people. And then our second pillar is well. Okay. And from that standpoint, that's everything from home ownership to investing in real estate to just financial literacy basics. And so being able to provide that, it's just been such a rewarding part. And then our third pillar is entrepreneurship. Okay. Because even if you're a person who works a job, there's probably something that you have, like this hobby, something that you really enjoy doing. Sure. Like, how do you make a business out of that? Right. How do you get more out of your entrepreneurial business? So we spend a lot of time on entrepreneurship. And then the fourth pillar is wellness. Okay. And so wellness, everything from gardening to yoga to, meditation, just really connecting with yourself from a wellness standpoint. And so those were the four pillars that we felt like make a good community. Okay. And people within that community to be able to connect in that way are better and well, for doing that.
Now, is the first, I want to be a little bit clear because I think this is super cool. Yeah. That you get freaking banks to donate their buildings to you.
Yeah, I've had one to do
crazy,
that. Yeah.
Right? And so these banks donate this building, and then you turn into a school or whichever one you use it with. Is the school for? Is it for kids only, adults, inner city, anybody?
So when we started, it's been around adults, and so the Vault has the Vault Industries, which is the profit side, and then the Vault Foundation, which is the nonprofit side. And so when we started, everything was around adults. Okay. Like adults coming to learn about real estate investing, adults learning about home ownership. So we go into these communities and we really just kind of dive in and start bringing the community to us into the Vault to really help them to live better, healthier, more productive lives. And so all of our work so far up until August has been around adults, like the last couple years that we've been existing, using them around adults. And then just recently, as a result of COVID, started the youth school and the youth entrepreneurship part out of the Vaults. And so I have a 10-year-old, and it was just kind of important to say, as parents, we've always been like, why don't our kids learn this? My son was like a serial entrepreneur at 10. He's had like a film editing business. Yeah. He would go to birthday parties, and it was like, he came to me and was like, he needed a Cash App because somebody wanted to Cash App him to make a graphic. Yeah. And I'm like, what? You're 10. And so it was just kind of like, I would nurture that, and I'm like, okay, before you make the graphic, they need to Cash App you first, or at least so then my business sense kicked in to and so I thought really, why the way our kids are wired, education is still wired in an old format.
Right.
And we have these new kids and we're not really like tailoring to them. And so my son had been asking me, could he be homeschooled for like a couple of years? And I was like, absolutely not, because I don't have time for that. I'm not good at that. And then just out of this kind of came like, well, why not do this? This is the best time than any to kind of get into a new education system and so kind of do education different. And I, you know, since I've started and been talking about it, I meet so many people who started different models. You know, families that have created schools in their homes. And, you know, education really used to be a very communal thing.
Right.
You know, and we kind of made it more of this, you know, systematic thing, and we never really adjusted because it's like a big mammoth system.
Right.
So you can't really just
hard
change.
to turn the boat.
Yeah, and so when I started researching and looking at like Montessori school and all these different forms of education, you would find that, you know, 10 parents came together, you know, 14 parents got together and said, we want something different.
Right.
And then that's what started to make those little changes. And so in our school, we have 21 kids, including my son.
So is it now more of a full school?
It is a full school, but it's called a homeschool. It's still considered to be a homeschool because all the kids have their curriculum. The parents in the state of Georgia, we have to sign like a homeschool form, so nobody's looking for your kid, like why is your kid not in school? Like it's the homeschool declaration. So you sign that, and then you basically assign them to this vault school, and they have their own little curriculums, you know, that's mapped out. But then they get to do the arts, wealth, entrepreneurship, and wellness as part of their daily.
Yeah, you hear a lot of people, you know, I interview a ton of people, and you hear people all the time talk about this problem in the school. Of not teaching entrepreneurship or not teaching money and so forth. But mainly I've only heard people talk about it. I think you're the first person that said, well, shit, I'll just do something about it.
It was daunting. Like, you know, it was absolutely daunting. And I just felt like, you know, our kids deserve better.
Right.
And what, you know, better time to do it. I could imagine saying, you know, oh, next year or in a couple of years
after COVID,
I'll be ready to start that. And so it's like it's a physical and virtual hybrid. A lot of technology components of the kids being able to from home tune into the classroom and what's going on. And so that connection was really important that I found for my son and for other kids, but to do it in small pods. And so we like consider this pod. And so now what we want to do is kind of plant these other pods, these other vaults, seed schools, like kind of all over.
Back to your farming days.
Yeah, back to the seeds. Yeah.
Sure. I want to talk to you about and get some major insight here from you about minority women in business. We talk about Black Lives Matter, BLM. All these are kind of these like hot topics that are unique, that are tough sometimes for people to have a conversation about because they don't know what's right, what's wrong. And then you have the other sides that have far opinions on both sides of them. But I want to get some insight here from you because you have been on really both sides of it for a lot of it. And I know you've done interviews on other TV shows and so forth. But if you can, talk to us a little bit about, let's just start maybe at the beginning for a little bit. I mean, growing up in the South, growing up in a Black family, and then going into business and so forth. What was just that? Tell me a little bit about what that was like. Is it harder? Is it more difficult? Did you find more challenges? What was the trick behind it?
You know, I think I had like some rose-colored glasses on for a while. You know, it's like, because it's not that things seemed easy, they just seemed that they had like a, you know, more of like a format, you know. I mean, like my family, like we have a second generation construction company. You know, my aunts and people would have their offices, their attorney offices. And so my jobs, you know, when I was growing up was always kind of like in their office. Like I never, like I did have one job at Hardee's and the fast food lasted a few weeks. But you know, for the most part, like all of my jobs were like kind of within family. And so I saw family having businesses. And so it was kind of, I never thought it was easy, but it was like I saw it. You know, and it wasn't like daunting. So when I got into business myself, and there's a difference, there's so many different kind of businesses. Like when I was with Allstate, that was a business that had like a system that was, you know, that you had to follow. They had like kind of this, you know, this is what you do. How I went about doing it in terms of creating, you know, a whole new way of getting business didn't exist necessarily, but once I got them into the pipeline, all I did was a system for it. So plugging into a franchise or something like that is one thing. When you start building a business from scratch, like that's a whole nother, and I believe that that's probably when I realized, like, gee, you know, Black people, you know, we might have it a little harder. And that was kind of the first time that I was just like, where it kind of showed up, because, you know, the thing that I've always said about money and wealth is, you know, black is black, white is white, but green is green. So green was always that conversation. If you're having a conversation about green and we agree and we understand, then we are mutual. We're not seeing color as much as we're seeing money and what we're talking about. So when you and I talk about real estate or, you know, land and all of that, like we're like, yeah, where's that at? You know? And so as I started, like, so doing real estate was different. I don't think I saw my color as my color worked for me from a lot of ways doing real estate, because as an investor, you know, a lot of people who I was showing up to were Black people. And so they weren't expecting to see me, so they were kind of like glad, like, a Black girl, like, you know. And so all of the rooms when I started investing in real estate, all of your RIAs and all of your places that you would go were always white males. You know?
White dominated male, especially in real estate.
Especially in real estate. So I was always either, you know, the bookkeeper or, you know, somebody's interracial wife, you know. So I was like, no, I'm the investor. You know. So I got those two boxes first.
Right away,
you know, right away. And then it was even, you know, kind of like, oh, well, you're a realtor. No, I don't have a real estate license. You don't want me selling you property. I'm going to write the check.
I'm going to buy it from you.
I'm going to, you know. So kind of getting that and showing up, I didn't realize until many years later that women now, especially like, I mean, all women, white and Black, are always like, you helped us pioneer real estate investing. You made it look okay for women to invest. We were always real estate agents with a realtor, but we were never showing up as the investor, and you showing up as the investor gave us like this whole like go woman, you know, which is, you know, I never really knew that I was doing that or that I could be called a pioneer of anything. But, and then I think about how important it was that as uncomfortable as those rooms may seem at the times, where it's just like, I'm not going to go back next Monday because they're going to call me the bookkeeper again. You know, that if I stopped or had I not kept going, like I wouldn't be able to help, you know, not only be a face to it, but be a information, because women in particular build wealth so different than men. Like our risk tolerance is just like, you know, because we have like our kids, our mothers, our families, and you know, like we like over process like everything. And the only thing that really helps us to overcome that is information. Like when we can get information, that's like, okay, you know, now I'm gonna make that, I still understand it's an investment, but I'm making it very calculated, and I understand it from this point of view, not a guy saying, bet the farm,
all in.
All in, you know. And so that was a really big deal for me. And so then, so when Black Lives Matter happened, it wasn't like I lived in a bubble, but it was like I lived in like a, whoa, this is bad, you know, like where I kind of could always flow from white, Black, Asian, you know, like I'm just like, you know, especially around real estate or money or anything. And so just to kind of see what was happening in my community and to kind of feel it more up close and personal. Like I don't think outside of, you know, having those uncomfortable moments of somebody having more money than you that's going to buy a property from under you that happen to be white or anything like that. I don't think outside of that, that I had like real discriminatory where I could just be like, oh wow, like I felt that, you know. you know, it was always still like, oh, well, they out-capitalized me, or they, you know, whatever. But at that moment, like with George Floyd and, you know, leading up to that, it was like, you know, it was kind of like a lot, but you still kind of like, oh, well, something must have happened that I don't know about, you know, but when George Floyd happened, it was just like, no, that happened.
Right.
You know, like we have the whole 8 minutes and 47 seconds on a phone that's being viewed all over the world. That happened. And that was when I knew, like, whoa, like this is bad, you know, like this is really bad. And then, you know, kind of from there, the anger and frustration, and, you know, it felt like, you know, we were back in Watts riots and civil rights, like all over again. And it was just kind of like, this is the stuff we've seen, but now I felt very much in it. And it was undeniable, like, you know, no, that happened, is not right, is nothing else you can say about it. And it made me very much more vigilant, and also more like, you know, I called it, you know, being unapologetically Black, like understanding, like I understand, but I understand everything, but I understand my community. That's my community, and that's not right. So I'm never going to be like, oh yeah, well, you know, it's like, and so it really brought me, and I think from my mentor, you know, I didn't realize it was when I got my voice came to the conversation, it was like, you know, there's so much wrong with this. And I started using my voice, and I felt like I had to use my voice. And so, you know, just to kind of play the events out, you had, you know, everything that happened with George Floyd, and I just remember seeing the protests and just being like real upset about it, but more so from my son standpoint, like, wow, this is like terrible for him.
10.
Like he shouldn't have to, you know, and as like a, you know, a Black mother, you're like, you know, okay, so I've already talked to my kid about not wearing a hoodie because Trayvon Martin had a hoodie on, so don't wear a hoodie. I've already talked to him about not playing loud music because, you know, Eric Jordan got killed over loud music, you know, and now I talked to him about Ahmaud Arbery not running down the street because people are going to think you might have stole something. So it's like all of these, and this is all before George Floyd.
Yeah, it's all leading up. Yeah.
You know, and so basically I got to go, like, and he's on TikTok and everything, so he's seeing what's happening.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to talk to my kid about this world? And so I'm trying to figure that out, and all of this is happening. So then the next day, you know, the protests are going on again, and then one of my buildings, my businesses, is impacted by the riots, where I get a call and they're like, they knocked out all your windows, you know, and
This is in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, downtown. And I'm like, what? You know, and so at that point, it was like, I'm off my sofa to like my baby, my business. And so in so many ways, I know it was me being called to the situation, because I wouldn't have engaged the way that I ended up engaging, but you know, the idea that I was like impacted made my engagement like, you know, show up, like this is, you know, happening. And I remember, you know, the news, it was so chaotic that night, and, you know, I'm down there, and, you know, and they're interviewing me, and it's just like, you know, all these emotions are raw, you know, like,
completely raw at the moment,
completely raw. Good thing I had like a 20-minute drive downtown, you know, to kind of like, But I mean, it was just like, you know, I remember saying on one of the interviews, like, enough is enough. Like, you know, are you mad about what? I'm mad about everything. You know, I'm mad that we're even having to even be here. You know, so, you know, it's like, I'm mad that my community, I'm mad that somebody's died, I'm mad that, you know, my windows are knocked out, but I understand the anger and frustration. I don't condone destruction. But the anger and frustration being misplaced, or where do we put that, you know, is what was happening in that moment. And so a lot of times when people are like, I'll never understand it and we'll never condone just tearing up people's stuff, but the anger and the frustration was definitely like, what do we do with all this? You know, like, what do we do with it? Pent
up emotion that's going on.
Yeah, it's like, and so, and it was just like, you know, like I said, I think that was the most, for most of the people you talk to that are Black, and even all the friends all the people that got that called, that were my white friends that called, they were just like, Sonia, oh my God, you know, And they were even wanting to understand more. Like, I remember saying, like, I have sons. I've never thought to say to them, this is what you do if you get pulled over. This is how you address, they're like, my white, I've never even thought to have a conversation. So it's like, why should I have to have that conversation with my kid, in a society that we all live in?
Right.
Yeah, and so that's when it became like, and I realized, the other thing that came out was in the downtown Atlanta area, there's like 5 black businesses that are like freestanding, that are not inside of a building. 5, and I own 2 of those. So that became like a big headline of like, and so you go like, oh, Atlanta is this black mecca. No,
just Sonia.
Right, no. but the idea, and so then it was around, I got to use my voice about that disparity and what it's like to own a business in downtown Atlanta. It's different than Metro Atlanta, or I have a business in Decatur, or I have a business,
Right.
So a lot of times when people go, oh, I have a business in Atlanta, it's not like Atlanta proper.
Right, exactly.
It's like,
that's a misused word.
It's a misused word, yeah. And so it was just all of that, and so it really, I wasn't planning to, be so vocal. But it kind of showed up at my doorstep.
Let me ask you this. Obviously, a lot of times when people look in, not understanding maybe BLM or what's going on or how it works, do you think that when the riots were taking place and it moved from this pent-up anger and emotion and frustration and it moved into the riots, maybe use the terminology looking back, although it's very fresh and just happened, do you think that did more bad, good, indifferent to the actual cause itself? Do you think it drew attention and maybe just attention on the topic is good?
Yeah, and I think that because I'm like a neutral person, and I always like to scale generations, like I love, Gen Zs, I love having millennials around, I love, and so I had a lot of conversation. I remember some of the people who came to help me clean up, and a lot of them were some of the students, because one of my business right around Georgia State, a lot of the businesses. And so, they came over, they're helping, they're cleaning up. And, and so it was like my opportunity to kind of like, what is going on? Let me hear from them. And they said to me, no, we're going to keep riding, because first of all, something that they said that was really interesting is they were like, Miss Sonia, that's what they called me. We were down the street, and when somebody said that they had got your building, we took off running, and we were like, no, that's black owned.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, interesting, and that was even happening, all this chaos that they were like, they didn't, and so it was kind of like black businesses were being called these casualty of war.
Yeah.
And so I think for them, is the attention was like the part that needed to happen. And I think that they really managed to do that. And I think that was all that was about, was the attention, like, let's draw the attention now. Some of the looting and some of this, it was just kind of like, what is that? Like, what does that have to do with anything? But as far as a lot of the protest and movement around it was and they reminded me, they said, and it just go to show that they weren't mindless. And that's what I appreciated, like, oh, y'all actually meet, and like there's somewhere y'all communicate, that was interesting. And they were like, yeah, the Watts riots, they protested for 70 days or something, and it was just like, no, we're going back out tonight. No, but you had the group who were just like really protesting,
right,
that were really just saying, we need to show up and organize, and we need to continue to bring attention to
awareness.
because this does not need to be a moment, it needs to be a movement. And I think that's where the Black Lives really kind of the movement of it, and not a moment. Like the moment was George Floyd or what happened, but that was a moment. But now we needed a movement, like we need a movement, like not to just keep, that doesn't stop. Like we gotta keep, hitting the agenda, like keep moving things forward for Black people.
Yeah. When you've used the word several times, your voice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And another kind of one of those things that I think people just confused about and don't know and have different opinions is like when you go to, say, the NBA basketball and you see these different athletes. LeBron, of course, is a massive one.
Yeah.
But a ton of them. When you see these athletes and they are using their voice kind of outside of the realm of basketball, and you see people attack and then you see people support from both different sides of it. Do you think it's important that everybody, and I'll stay with right now with black athletes or that have brands or voices, whatever it may be, do you think it's important for them to use that voice? Or are they stepping too far out of their realm and,
Depends on what they're
offending
saying.
people?
No, for the most part, I think that what this takes to me is everybody feeling a certain way.
Yeah.
And, just recently it was like, this is not a race thing. This is like a society thing. And I applaud my white counterparts so if I take my sphere influence and LeBron takes his sphere influence and Kevin Hart or, other people, you have to, that's how you start to change, because otherwise it feels massive. It feels like we're never going to change,
right.
And then that just breeds like, oh, well, and so to me, what it takes is my sphere, talking to my, people about change in, how can we, even just move the needle a little,
right.
And LeBron using his voice to talk to people who have influence around him, and if we all start doing that in our own little ways, to me, that's what will make everything different. We're like, gone are the days of a leader in terms of like, we need a, this kind of out front person. No, we need like everybody kind of.
Like back in the day, you had MLK, right?
Yeah.
And it was the face,
And
the
you always
voice. He was it.
Yeah.
And your kind of approach is saying those days are kind of gone.
Yeah.
And really, probably with social media and everything that we have, you're saying everybody should be using their voice as their circle of influence to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's so many. It's such a unique topic that I think sometimes people are confused on and don't know which way to go, which way to say, what not to say.
Yeah.
So I love having your insight on some of these things here. Last question I want to talk to you about, because kind of a little bit on this topic, but a little bit different as well. You see a lot of in real estate. We've both been in real estate, and you see a lot of communities that are the inner city communities, right? That and I think of where I used to do a lot of real estate was in Gary, Indiana.
Oh yeah.
If you know where that's at.
Yeah.
And but Detroit and all these different inner cities, and they're full of this super low income, part subsidized to a certain degree, Section 8, all this different stuff, right? And the thing that bothers me the most is how generationally it's staying there. There's not a lot of like getting out of it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
You have any insight on like what fixes that that massive? Let's just use the inner city of Detroit or whichever. There's tons of them all over the place.
Yeah.
What fixes that?
Gee, Andrew, that's a good one. But I have put a lot of thought in it, and I believe I have somewhat of a solution in it. Being on shows and knowing people like you and the people that you are, like and surrounded by, it takes all of us working together, right? So what I did, because one of my bosses is in a, little inner city, high poverty numbers, poverty rate, it's in a food desert, it's in, anything that could be bad, it's in. And so that way, so I did that on purpose, looking at those demographics, and I started something called social real estate investing.
Okay.
And social real estate investing, we all think about the social consciousness, so, conscious capital, and, everybody's wanting to be more social, but we never really think about it as it relates to real estate.
Okay.
So we come into like a community and we're like, oh, these poor people, they're not doing anything with this land. This is right by the stadium. This is right by, it's prime area.
Right.
So we're just gonna, overtake it. And some of it is conscious and some of it is unconscious. So it's that piece where it's like, okay, if I'm an investor and I go in and I buy Miss Mary's house, then if I'm not thinking about, Miss Mary's been there 50 years and, second generation house. And I'm not thinking about how what I'm doing is impacting the community. Before I know it, I've like dismantled the community, and that wasn't my intention. So what I started doing was like, how do we get the Miss Marys and the people up to par to understand more about community and more about ownership, more about, getting in East Point, Georgia, it's like 70%, almost 70% are tenant occupied.
Yep.
So you can't build a community with that many tenants. So how do I convert those people into owners? How do I now use these classes, use home ownership, use that to like help bridge and help create homeowners in those areas? Because a lot of those people, when you start digging in, it's a lot of hopelessness, it's a lot of non-information, it's a lot of lack of resources, it's like all those things. And so it kind of like gets put over there until it's valuable enough or we are ready to deal with it. And so it's like, let's deal with from the inside out.
Right.
That's kind of the model that I like to
That you're
use.
working on.
That it's like, it's from the inside out. Like, how do we take this community and build them up to be, and then that way we end up with like, houses that are 160,000 that are not maybe 400,000, because now we're creating environments that they can actually live and afford and don't get displaced out of them.
Yeah.
And so I think if we all kind of think about doing that part, of it, I think it starts to help move the needle and see the difference. Like,
Do you think that in some of those like inner city areas that home ownership for the Black culture, do you think that's something that would really help push that down the road a lot further?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
having that home ownership and
Absolutely.
responsibility of the home and all
Absolutely.
that, because you do take ownership.
You do take
right?
ownership
versus
when you
a tenant,
feel-
right?
Right, yeah, and or versus like, oh, I'm just left this. My grandmother left me this house that really has no value because the shutters are falling apart and I can't get any work done to it or whatever. And so it's like it's a lot of assumptions that we make, without looking at like, wow, what if they had like some grants or some programs to do that? But you do have to educate a lot. You just don't throw money in something. You do have to, okay, this is what community looks like. This is, with this grant, it takes this or that,
Right.
and you have to like, educate, but home ownership would make a huge difference. And a lot of times in the Black community, I say that we've kind of, given away home ownership, in one sense is the only thing that comes to mind right now for entrepreneurship. Like we're one of the fastest growing entrepreneurship, bases, but then with that, we don't always have like everything we need to fit into a system to buy a house.
Right.
And so it's like, well, I'd rather own my business than own a house, but I really would like both. And so it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of understanding that has to go into how do we create programs that really speak to what the need is.
Right.
And you have to understand it. Because, I can outside look in, be like, oh, man, But then when I go in the community and I really talk and understand and see, then I'm like, wow, if only we had, and what's one of the things that I'm hoping to work on, with the vault, that we're able to have some financing and mortgage programs that we can underwrite, based on things that make sense. Like people are paying to live somewhere,
Right.
and they're paying on time.
Yeah.
And so, to not think that they are going to be able to be given a home and pay that, it's kind of like because they don't have.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
friends of mine and so forth that have had rental properties.
Yeah.
And they've had Miss Mary.
Yeah.
For your example,
Right, yeah.
lived there for 15 years and
Yeah.
paid rent
And
every
paid
single
rent
month for
every single
15
month.
years straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've always thought that because I've done some stuff in those communities, I've always felt like home ownership would be a great way to
is, yeah.
push that needle down the road.
Yeah.
To try to bridge that gap to a certain degree. If they want to get some more information about the vault and where's the place they could go to get some information from
They
you?
can go to soniabooker.com.
Just your personal name,
Yep,
Sonia.
soniabooker.com.
Booker.com. And
Yep.
I'll make sure we put that in the link, the bio down there as well. You got a ton. I know we talked a lot about BLM, but I want to just before we wrap this up, I want to get some business insight from you.
Okay.
And one of the things I always do is I pull some fresh articles, news
Okay.
articles, and I love getting new whatever's happening in the news. So all these will be from today, yesterday that we pull. and just get your opinion, insight on what you see with what's going on in the world. Not so much politics side, but just business and what's moving in it. So let me show you one article, and we'll see what this first one is here. And okay, so this is a unique one because this is Facebook and Zuckerberg. And they're talking about, if you've seen this going on recently, right? This is from, I think, yesterday. No, this is from today. And
this is like
this is fresh, right off
yeah.
the press here. Zuckerberg, Facebook will restrict less content after U.S. election. So this is a unique topic that's going on in our world today, right?
Yeah.
Where social media is so freaking powerful.
Yeah.
Not just Facebook, but Twitter, LinkedIn. I know that's a big platform for you, right? LinkedIn?
Yep.
Is that your kind of main place,
LinkedIn? Yeah, because I get to have a lot of fun there. I get to be business, but
business and casual.
Yeah,
you have the mullet going on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I think people they like it because it's like they expect to see all this like.
What's just if they want to follow you? What's your LinkedIn handle?
LinkedIn/Sonia Booker.
/Sonia Booker.
I. Just remember the I. And sometimes Google corrects you if you spell it with a Y.
They spell it.
No, you're not looking for. This is who you're looking
it's
for.
IA.
It's IA.
We'll put a link there.
Yeah.
What do you got any thoughts on this? Meaning that it's unique. I mean, there's different sides of it, right? Is it good? Is it bad? Not just Facebook in general here, but just in social media. They collect so much data.
Yeah.
And they went through this process of let's censor on both sides, not just on one side. On both sides, censoring what's going on in the election.
Yeah, I think it's not good.
You think it's not good?
I don't think it's good.
Yeah.
Because it's so much control. It's so much control, but
it's tricky though.
It's tricky.
It's tricky.
Because we actually gave them all the information.
I know. So we signed up for it and gave you everything.
Now we're like.
But then you have
so
you have someone that's now controlling what you can and cannot see. And they're dictating if this is good or bad for you.
Yeah,
and that's
but
weird.
That's
not
like, good. That's weird.
Yeah, for you to tell me what I can and cannot see, to me, it seems like you're almost crossing a line there.
I definitely feel that's
But then I go on the other side of it and say,
they're protecting me.
Yeah, I know. That's a tough one that's going on with the elections. Here's let's see this next one right here. This is from Fox survey. Oh, this is a pretty cool one. Survey finds that records number of American households obtained a bank account in 2019. That bank accounts are basically going up in 2019, including this horrible time of COVID and everything that's going on. What you got any insight on what you? And a lot of it's from low unemployment and so forth.
Yeah.
You think that's all because of you and what you're pushing?
I think it's good.
You think Sonia Booker did all that?
I have to take a lot of credit. And does that also mean that money's coming from under the mattress?
Yeah, where's it coming from?
Yeah, that was mattress money that's like, now I'm going to open a bank account.
Do you ever see the thing with Kevin Hart, which I love Kevin Hart, but he did a documentary on Netflix. If you saw it or not.
Was it the Christmas one? Or
No. It's just a documentary of his life and him on the road. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. It's like, for me, a 5-part series.
Okay.
And they follow him around. And one of the things he talked about and hit hard on was his movement of trying to get lower income to go open a bank account. Stop the payday loan, cash checking, go open a bank account. And that's kind of his message, kind of we were talking about the house stuff.
Yeah, it's huge, but you also know it's there. That's the answer I was looking for. Unbanked American households. So there's like a large percentage of black households that are unbankable, unbanked, and so there's certain things that you have to get into a banking system. So that's all good.
Yeah.
Yay, go Sonia.
Yeah, go Sonia. Go the vault school. The vault school.
Yeah.
You guys get in on that on SoniaBooker.com.
Yeah.
Right there. Last one I got here for you. This is gonna be a good one because you're a brand. So this right here is Kim Kardashian, and she reveals she makes more money in one Instagram post than an entire season of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Now, do you watch the show Keeping Up with the Kardashians?
I've seen
Have you
two
seen
episodes.
You've seen 2 episodes.
And I don't know what they did, 13
Yeah, it's
seasons
like
or
I think
something?
they just it was the final season. I think they just did. But this is like showing you the power of a freaking brand. Right here, right? Yeah. And which is really what you created for yourself. We were talking about the power of a brand, and kind of how the industry moved from information to influence age.
I mean, that's just astounding. That is astounding, but it also shows the power of social media too.
Yeah.
you know, and not TV of, you know, like this whole show on E.
And that's what,
but
like
because
20
they can get
episodes in a
so
season.
many, right, and they can get so many eyeballs on IG on one post. I mean, hundreds of millions, you know, that they can drive.
What would you say to maybe some young entrepreneurs or older, but let's stay with the vein we've been talking about, with maybe some black entrepreneurs that are young kids coming up.
Yeah.
Any advice you give them on being a brand, going down this road at all?
Oh man, just be true to yourself,
Okay.
and always know whatever you're putting out is you. Like you're building your brand right now.
Yeah.
At 5, 6 years old,
True.
like it, because everything sticks and everything, you know, follows you, and so you know, just so be mindful of that. But I think young people are brands now.
Yeah.
They're brands.
Yes, so unique.
Like they're born brands.
My sister just had a baby recently, and it's amazing because he's maybe like 19 months or something, right? And he watches his cartoons not on TV.
Yeah.
He watches them on YouTube.
On YouTube. Yeah.
And at like 19 months, he knows how to like swipe and click and find. And I'm sitting there watching, thinking, this is nuts.
They call them the digital age. Like their generation, and my son is born into that, and it's like they're just innate. They're the digital age. They just know the stuff. You don't even have to teach it to them. They're teaching us.
They grew up with it. And then you hear a lot of parents going against it, saying, I'm going to pull this away from my kid. But to me, it's almost like you're pulling society.
Yeah.
Like you're pulling.
That's a great point, because one of the things that we've been doing at the school is like, you know, doing these webinars and parent discussions around your kid in the digital age, and like how do you parent in that age?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's this balance, like it's like going against the grain, telling your kid not to be on digital, but they're like born digital. It's like trying to get them, you know. And so, but it's like, how do you handle that? How do you handle the amount of hours? How do you put parameters around it? How do you censor it? You know, so it's mainly focus on that stuff than focusing on taking it away and getting, you know, they're using it and power, because kids are making money on these things.
Oh yeah.
So it's like,
crazy.
You're taking,
look at the kids on
banking everything
on TikTok making more money than I make right now. On TikTok, and I'm also upset about it, actually, and jealous.
Yeah,
at the same hand. I'm
totally
gonna start dancing just very soon.
My son said he'll start managing my social media. Yeah, I watched him just get followers.
Unique, just on the concept we're talking about. Do you think that, you know, social media obviously can also change the playing field a lot of because you get so many eyeballs and so much different stuff to it.
Yeah.
Do you think that is that maybe a opportunity for the inner city black kids to build a brand, create money, create income, and maybe they should look into using it more? Is that an opportunity they should look into?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and what I'm concerned about is them understanding how to invest and grow that money. It's one thing that they can make money, and you can talk to a lot of people, even social media influencers now, that can make money. But what is the sustainability of that?
Right,
like, how, you know, are you as kids setting up trust accounts? Because, you know, it's only so much you can do that way. You know, putting all those things in place, you know, now. And so that's what I'm really excited about, to be able to use the Vault School to like also tap into communicating with the community. So you might not be a member of the school, but we want to share like all this like great information, because it is one thing to make money, but to know what to do with that, how to invest it, you know, how to grow it.
The next level of it.
That's what we want to like.
Yeah, you see so many times people get the money and lose it.
I mean, like how many times, right? Yeah.
How many athletes are going to go through that same process?
And the social influencers, a lot of them are, you know, because
it
comes
forever,
so quick that it feels like, okay, I'll just do another post and it'll be that quick. And then one day, you know, somebody's fresh and new out, or something else has happened, or, you know, and it's like it goes away. So you really have to, how do you mine that, you know, how do you really, you know, make the most of that? So I think that's something exciting. So they're all brands.
Yeah. I think everybody has a brand, personal brand now, right?
I wish I had known I was a brand. I didn't know. I was a brand before I knew I was a brand. I would have like did stuff totally different. I didn't know.
I wanna, as you come in here, I wanna get your insight and your answer for what money is.
Yes.
And I think you were pretty excited about it when you first came to the office. And so obviously we started the brand here to talk about, obviously just have an authentic conversation about money in general, right? And try to open the doors into for you to understand it, you have to be, you got to talk about it,
Right.
And it's really what we're doing. And I love asking the question.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear your words. So you put your answer here, whether how
And
it
it's
doesn't
gonna
matter.
live on.
It's going to go on the wall, and then you sign it right here below it, and then me and you will talk about it.
Oh boy.
Right when we.
The moment.
All right, we'll give you this Sharpie right here.
Okay. Let's see. Here we go. All right, you ready?
You got it? I'm excited.
You're
You've been
excited?
pumped all day about it.
Okay.
Is it one word, two word?
It's one word.
Here we go.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, so this one I'm very passionate about.
Are you?
Oh, I think it describes money.
Oh.
So we're gonna have a good conversation.
Okay.
So her answer is, for those at home watching, answer is money is energy. Money is energy. This is to me the very definition of
Yeah.
what money is.
Yeah.
But tell me what you mean when you say money is energy.
That's so good. So money is energy. It flows. It's meant to flow. We're energy. Everything's energy. So you put out good energy about money, you attract money. You put out bad energy about money, you detract money. You know, it's all in how the energy, and it flows. Money is meant to flow. It's currency. And sometimes we want to get it and hold it and hold it up, but it's like it's meant to flow.
Constantly moves.
Constantly
it has to move.
It
right?
has to move.
That's why earlier when I was talking about the saving and investing side.
Yeah, like you don't want to stick it somewhere for long, not in the mattress, but it's till you
because
figure it out.
when you try to hold
gotta-
on to it, money, and let's just say save your way to
5%.
wealth, it doesn't work because money is it's energy. It's meant to
energy.
flow.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think when people don't understand it, they become a dead end road to money, and it just like stops with
And it
them.
stops.
Instead of them allowing it to constantly flow. I had a great
Yeah.
conversation with when I interviewed Kevin O'Leary about, and that was this thing, it was like money movement. And
Money moves.
it's supposed to constantly move, and his whole approach to money was as soon as he gets it, he wants to move it.
I want to move it. I want to invest it. I want to give it. I want to make a difference with it. I want to, and that's how I am.
The insight on energy when I was looking at it was money is, if you think about it, money is actually stored energy.
Yeah.
So no matter what dollar you have, it's irrelevant how you got it. It's basically coming from stored energy. Yeah. So if you go work a job or you do a house or a building, energy was spent. And energy, when that energy was spent in return, or you go back to when you were a kid, right? You grew the crops,
Right.
energy was spent,
Yeah.
and in return, you sold that and got money. And all money was representing was actually the energy that you spent had a dollar amount associated with it. And so now the dollar was just representing energy that you had used.
Yeah, I like stored energy. I like
it's
that.
really what it
'cause
is. If you think about it, anytime you have money, it doesn't matter if I have a house and someone pays me rent.
Yeah.
That money's energy. It's stored energy, right?
Yeah.
It was from me buying the house, them working, getting a job. They used energy, and money is just how we keep track of that energy, so that we aren't carrying around horses and bartering with cows and stuff anymore, right? But it's really stored energy is all really money is. So I love the word. I'm trying to think right now. I think it's the only time.
The first time I was walking through the hall and I was like,
yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
See it.
I don't think anybody has given us. It's a very,
so
very.
money's energy, the first one.
It's a very good one. And I'm gonna tell everybody, no one else can use that word. It's taken.
Stable. Okay,
It's taken.
Sonia
We'll
Booker ends
copyright
here.
it for you.
Energy,
We'll put a
Sonia
trademark
Booker
on it.
energy. I love it. Put my signature under it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Look, I'm wrapping up here. Talk to the viewers.
Okay.
They're listening to you. You're an entrepreneur. You're a female entrepreneur, a black entrepreneur. You created some crazy successful multiple businesses in multiple industries.
Yeah.
You have your cosmetic line that you have. What would be some
clothing I'm working on?
Yeah, that's right. Welcome to being a brand. And but in that, what would be the final words of advice you'd give these entrepreneurs, business owners today about being successful in business?
I would say stay true to who you are. Stay true to who you are and what it is you want to do, and to know that there's never been a better time to do it. Like, this is the best time in your life for whatever it is, that gift and talent you've been sitting on. This is the time to get off the fence and get it going. There will never be another time. So don't wait, and stay true to who you are. And then it's just time to go after you know, that dream, that goal with that reckless abandonment, you
Yep,
know, like
yep.
with everything you got, like what you got to
I
lose.
think it's a true, very, very important ingredient.
Yeah.
Is you use the term, you use the words reckless abandonment.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes being an entrepreneur is
Yeah.
part of that. It's about willing to go out there when no one
Yeah.
else is.
Yeah.
And do some sometimes crazy stuff.
Yeah.
To try to make it work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think people that try to put their foot in the water.
Right.
Or their toe in the water to
Yeah.
see if it'll work, it freaking never works.
It
for
never
that person.
works.
It never works.
Yeah.
Business is too fast. There's
Yeah.
too many ups and downs and battles and that you got to go through. That when you
Yeah.
just play business,
Yeah.
From a
You
buddy of
never
mine
really
that always
get the
talks about people
feel-
that play
yeah.
business
Yeah.
never freaking work out.
Yeah.
And but that's a great, and I love the other thing that you said about there's never been a better time. There's a great statement that says, when is the best time to plant a tree? Have you heard this before?
No.
It goes with what you're saying. It says, what's the best time to plant a tree? 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
Okay, what's the
Yeah.
second best time to plant a tree?
Now,
Today.
today.
Yeah, today. Which
Yeah.
is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there's never been a better time. You
It's
got to go
never
today.
been a better
You can't go
time.
back in history. You can't change it right now. You just got to go out there today.
Gotta go out there today.
I love it, man. I love your interview. I can't wait to talk to you more.
Yes.
And if they just go to Sonia Booker to
Go to
find out more about you. You're
soniabooker.com.
speaking around the nation.
Yeah.
You got books. You got clothing. You got
Yeah,
cosmetics.
got books, real estate,
and I heard you're writing.
Yeah.
Are you working on a new book right now?
I am.
I thought I heard
Yeah.
some secrets that you're working on
Yeah,
a new book
I
here.
am.
And if they want the books, they just go to your website directly.
They can
You got
go to
both
the
of them over
website.
there.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, were these some of the ones that were featured on Oprah?
Yes.
These were the ones
They
that were
uh-huh.
featured on Oprah, right?
Yep.
Very, very good. So, Sonia, I love having you out. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the Money Is Show with Sonia Booker.